This is Radio Havana, Cuba.
This is Radio Pyongyang of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
This is Moscow.
Everybody. Ooh, pulled that down quickly. Wow, it's a live and interactive program tonight. And by interactive, I think I'm being a little judicious because, hey, it's me. It's me, Doc Normal, back at ya. And tonight, we're doing another Crazy Talk on schedule. Well, you know, we're 30 minutes late. Well, that's fine. It's a live and interactive program, but it's really a podcast. So what's been going on with me? Quite simply, I've been at Webvisions, like, for most of the week. So we did Webvisions Live on Thursday, Friday, set up on Wednesday. It's a little bit crazy in the studio here because that was a big event, and so cameras and computers and our gear was all out of studio. A lot of the time we are able to actually do live events and do studio events all at the same time. Webvision's a little bit big. We had a stage. We did we streamed all the keynotes. We streamed panels. As we speak right now, the Cami Chaos podcasting panel is on its way up to the cloud, and so that's really exciting. It was a great panel. There are other panels. Merlin Mann killed it on his closing keynote. We're going to hopefully get that posted pretty soon up to the cloud. Very exciting. Very, very exciting. And just a lot of content coming your way from the event space in Webvisions. 10 years of Webvisions. It was an exciting time. It was exciting for us to produce. Really had a good time. Had a great team. We had Cody, our intern. We had Morgan, our other director, producer here. And we also had Tyler. And we had the wonderful Kimberly, who's also our director, producer over at Cable, puts the Strange Old Life show on Cable. So really, really exciting stuff. Had a great time. While I was there, and at the after party, I met and chatted with for quite some time. I've met her before, but we actually were able to sit down and chat. I sat down and met and chat and even had dinner with Lorelle VanFossen, and she has moved to the area, and we'll talk about how long she's been here. And kind of through the whole thing, I was thinking about doing Crazy Talk, and I said, hey, you know what? I do this podcast on Sunday. I just relaunched it, something I did in November, relaunched it again. I'm trying to get it up and running, having a good time. Maybe you want to come on and Skype in and talk about, talk Crazy Talk. And so she said, sure. And so we have her tonight. We have Lorelle VanFossen. I'm just going to give you a one-liner. Her resume is huge. She's been in this blogging thing. She is a blogging goddess, fairy god, blog mother. She can correct me if I'm wrong, from WordCamp 2 years ago. Lorelle VanFossen is considered one of the top bloggers and women bloggers in the world. She is the host of Lorelle on WordPress, and also is the community manager at Woopra, which is a blog statistic package. She's also one of the principals over at Bitwire Media. She's been blogging, podcasting, doing all this stuff since the 90s. She's on the road. She'll tell us all about that. I'm going to bring her in right now, and if the gods of podcasting bless this, we can bring her in. Lorelle, are you there?
I don't know yet. I'm still recovering from that wonderful introduction.
Thank you. Well, I was winging it, so hopefully it was okay.
You wunged it good. You wunged it really good.
Thank you. Well, it is great to have
wasn't
you.
Webvisions wonderful? Oh, thank you very much. It was wonderful. What a thing to ask me at 1:30 in the morning after a long night and dinner.
Well,
hey, you want to be on my show?
That was a late night dinner that we
And
had.
a late night request. So I'm a little nervous about what I actually signed up for. Be kind to me. Be gentle to me, baby. So I'm looking forward to it. Wasn't Webvisions just was amazingly powerful?
It was great for us. What did you tell us? What excited you about Webvisions? What you saw there? What kind of subjects and things that really got you going?
Well, first of all, it was wonderful to see people that I knew. Now that I'm new in Portland, I'm starting to see the same faces over and over again, which is fabulous for me because it's starting to feel like a home after so many years on the road. And, every adventure is, I don't know anybody, it's hard to build relationships. So that was fun to see a lot of people that I'm starting to create some relationships with locally. But there was some just really dynamic presentations, great ideas. Oh, wow, my head is still exploding with so much of it. It was really amazing. Luke Williams, who was a keynote on Saturday morning, I think it was, or was it Friday morning? I've now lost track of everything.
I think he opened. Yeah, he opened on Thursday morning. He was the
Thursday
opener
morning.
on Thursday morning. Yeah.
Thursday morning. That's right. He was amazing at looking at the disruptive thinking and really identifying what he's calling the gap. That's the parts that are missing. And I talk about that. I have for years when I give presentations on how to write for blogs and the citizen journalism of, you can only write, it's the blog echo chamber. Everybody's saying the same things over and over and over again. So if you really want to be the thought leader, you have to find what are the missing pieces, what's not being said, what's left out. And that's not the people who are blogging right now who are sitting, they wake up in the morning and they check their feeds before they even pee in the morning. That's not those people. These are the people that really look at the information, they find out what's not being said, and then they fill in those holes. And they become the thought leaders of today, not just the citizen journalists. And so that's what he was talking about, was finding those missing pieces and talking about what's not being talked about, finding the solutions that aren't there. And he gave some brilliant examples. One of the ones I loved was you have Hertz and all these rental cars, which you pay, by the day. He says, well, there's a gap there. What about people who just want to use a car for an hour or two? Thus, there was a hole in it, a gap, and Zipcar came along. So that way of thinking innovatively and really looking at those missing pieces, I love that. Scott Porat of I Can Has Cheeseburger, please, if you're ever in an area to see his presentations or get onto YouTube or Fiddler or Vimeo, wherever, and see his presentations, he does a fantastic job. He's a dear friend of mine. I love the innovative, Zen-like, disruptive thinking process that is I Can Has Cheeseburger. It's an amazing thing. That they have taken a business model, which, in the old days when you and I started, you'd set out to go, I want to start a business. And you say, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 to 5 years? Wasn't that the normal?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If any. 5-year, probably 5-year plan.
5-year plan. And then, and you'd go and you'd have your mission and step by step. Well, they decided to create a year plan. And then over the process of developing, they said, no, that's too long. In the web world, in today's world where real time matters and instant is life or death, we need to shorten that down. So they cut it down to about 6 months. It still wasn't good enough. They now have it down to 3 weeks. They are releasing a new startup about every 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes 3. But they've gotten that business model to succeed or die within just a few weeks. And then they give it 3 weeks to 6 months to survive. They can kill it at any time because they understand that they're just moving fast, making decisions. And yet they've created a business environment. Instead of being high-powered, suck all the life energy out of somebody and all of the employees, they've created a work environment that's simple, clean, fun, passionate, medium stress. It's amazing.
So
I love these presentations.
So I think that's you bring up a good point, and I stop you right there in your tracks and ask you, is it because of the ease of use of blogging platforms like WordPress, which are arguably, I remember Matt Mullenweg last year at WordCamp Portland, mentioning, I mean, these are almost like less like blogs anymore as they are content management systems. Is it because of the ease of use that someone can use these tools, put these things in place, and immediately have some, I guess we would say, some sort of intellectual property, something, or some entertainment property on the web in 3 weeks? Is it that ease of use as to why that cycle's gone from 5 years to 3 weeks?
Okay, producing is faster than ever when it comes to production, but putting the content and making quality content, that takes that takes mind. That takes a lot of mind juice and a lot of creative inspiration and things. That just doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it doesn't matter the tool unless you have quality.
So
it just doesn't matter. So, for example, Scott talks about, quite often he talks about the wedding blog, which is the I Can't Has Cheeseburger version for weddings, and disaster wedding pictures and videos and things like that. They tried that 3 or 4 times before they found what was a really good feel for it, and they're still kind of tweaking on it, but they set it up and went, oh no, disaster, and killed it immediately. And then again, another time it didn't even make it to what they call shipment, to release to the air, because it just wasn't right. So it's trial and error, but after a while you get good at it and figuring out. Now I don't recommend that somebody with one idea say, oh, I'm going to release this in 3 weeks and it's going to live or die. They have now 50 sites out of 3 or 4 years that they've been doing this model that are what they consider money-making success. Now, if they're releasing one every 2 weeks, that's 25 a year or more. 50 out of 3 or 4 years worth of attempts is pretty darn good, but there's still a lot of things that never saw the light of day.
So I kind of latched on to the technology and the ease of use of launching this on the web and the technology, and you really came back to it's less about the actual technology and the tools and more about what would it be, the new way of team building, because you're saying it is the content at the end of the day. Is it how the team is put together to create that content in such a rapid I'm trying to get to why it would take 5 years and now it only takes 3. What is that secret sauce?
It always boils down to product or service.
So how do you get to product? I mean, who is it? Is it that way to put together a virtual team, or what do you think?
Well, there are products that sell themselves, and then there are teams that convince you the product is worth buying. And there's a whole lot of crap out there that we're spending money on that we don't need. So there's some creative people that make that happen. They convince us that we can't live without this. And then there's things where we just look at them or hear about them, and we don't have to be convinced. We just look and we realize we need this in our lives. And iPhone is one of those where people, not only you have both sides of it, you have the whole iPhone and iPad phenomenon, is that you have people who are evangelists in this. But when you really get down to it, the product kind of sells itself. And then word of mouth just keeps it moving. So it's an interesting, I don't know what the magic in that is. Talk to Scott Porat. He's had, quite a few very successful embalming things, startups that he's done. And what I like is this innovative approach. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work for everybody. Now, I talked to my husband, who is a aeronautical engineer, and he's having lots and lots of problems at work with that entrenched corporate mentality where it's meeting after meeting after meeting, and it seems like there's more meetings than there is getting done time some days. And, it's still that old-fashioned way of communicating They have proprietary email controls, proprietary systems. They're dealing with other people's proprietary, and so nothing talks to each other. And the people don't even seem to talk to each other sometimes. And so I talked to him about what Scott was talking about as an example about the swarm thinking process and other things in dealing with the business. He said, oh, no, it'd never work for us. And when it boiled down to, and it isn't just him, I'm not talking specifically about his company, but there are still a whole lot of companies that are completely entrenched in one thing at a time. Therefore, it takes longer to produce anything, because if you have one person doing one thing and one person doing another thing, and person 3 is waiting on person 2 who's waiting on person 1, it's just going to take longer. That's how that old methodology works. What Scott's proposing, what he's been working with his team, is what's called the swarm mentality, where what if you, instead of having 1 week with 5 people spread out, kind of communicating with each other, but each one has a task, and that takes a whole week to produce the end result. Or you take all 5 people, you lock them in a room, and you say, you have 20 hours to do it, go. Nobody leave this room. You will get it done in 2 days instead of 5 days. People are talking to each other. There's more energy and things that are happening. So I find that really fascinating. And I'm trying to find ways of how to incorporate that into my various companies so that we can communicate more readily with each other while using the tools. So getting to some of the tools that I've heard about at WebVision to speed up productivity and how to communicate with each other. One of the challenges that came up was on tools like Skype, or Google Talk, and a lot of instant messaging and services and things like that. A lot of people said it's really frustrating because they can't talk to more than one person at a time. So and that, which is true. If you're on Google Talk and AIM and a lot of those things, it's really hard to have a little conference chat unless everybody's on the same software, same update, same da-da-da-da-da. And so the solution that came out from Scott Pratt that just cracked me up to no end was IRC chat.
Which has been around forever.
It's old tech for a new solution. And he says, and I thought, that's brilliant, because I worked for years in the beginning of WordPress development on the IRC chat. And eventually, I just didn't have time for it. It got a little snarky, and there was more time doing social than production. Well, now that's flipped. They finally had some people getting in there, slapping some heads together and saying, okay, we got to focus on being productive and not just, social, snarky. And so things are now coming back. And I always say everything old is new again. I mean, what's Twitter? Really? What is Twitter? It's IM and IRC in a way.
It's social IM, basically. With group IM, which is the genius of it. It's a simple solution. I mean, it's when we and I'll plug something here, and then I'll plug some more of your stuff. If you ever go back, go watch Strange Love Live at Bar Camp last year when we had Dom Segala come, who wrote the 140 Characters book, who was there, a principal in he was working for what's the player that we use all the time? We used to embed it all the time. Anyway, it's the MP3 player. They were an original podcast startup before iTunes, and that's actually where Twitter was invented, at that company. I can't remember it. I've used it so many times. Yikes. But he talked about, just the first tweets, and it's like, going to the store, and I just want to know my team, where I'm at with my team, right? I wanted to step back, too. I think Skype has some group chat, because I know some people who are doing Skype as well. But outside of the tools...
They do, but what I found, because we use this all the time with all of our podcasts and a lot of our stuff, is that everybody has to be updated and on the same playing field. And sometimes when we're working with people internationally, we have to wait while they update, and maybe they can't, or some reason with it. So it's getting better all the time. And Jim Courtney has a great blog called Voice of the Web, and it is talking a lot about Skype and communication software and program stuff, but it's mostly state of the art. So I cannot wait to talk to him about how about we do some things and revitalize the old stuff and remind people there's still, it doesn't have to be all pretty and clean and spanky new. It's got to work. So let's go back to the old stuff. Speaking of old stuff,
Well,
what was the first way you ever connected to the web? I want to know.
the web?
Yeah, the first time you connected to the
or
internet.
Or the net.
To the internet. To the net. How did you originally connect to the net when you first started?
Originally it was CompuServe and BBSs. And then I set up my own BBSs. So I ran my own.
Through your telephone.
Yep, through the
Right?
modems.
Through the telephone line.
Absolutely. Multiple telephone lines, as it turned out, once you got your own BBS running, right? Out of your basement.
Right.
Now we podcast out of the basement. There you go.
There you go. Yeah, we started with all the phone lines. I was on the stuff before CompuServe, and then I got involved with CompuServe. And then when we hit the road in 1996, we begged, borrowed, and stole every phone connection that we could find while we were on the road, using the local numbers through CompuServe. And we had an acoustic coupler and over 300 feet of phone cord that we would string around from the trailer all the way underneath cars and trailers and motorhomes and things to the nearest phone booth. And you know, the fast, we thought we were in heaven if we got 4,800 baud connection.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with acoustic coupler.
It was like 300 to 600. And I look at from 1996 to now, 2010, how far we've come. That people who have iPads and iPhones, and they're connecting from everywhere, and they still have to have that little wired or that phone, that cellular connection. They're still dependent upon proximity to that access.
So Lorelle, what was your first online experience? Was it CompuServe, or was it where did you go for your first online experience back then?
The University of Washington. We had our own lines and things, because it was the early days of ARPANET and the development of the whole, the internet communications, and I was there as part of all of that process of it. And but the most enjoyable experience, it really came with CompuServe, with all the forums that are on CompuServe. And when you think of the CompuServe structure, where you had different forums, and you had your own little email and all your other little things, but if you wanted to carry on a conversation with people of like minds, you went to the CompuServe forums. They had photography forums, and travel forums, and RV forums, and fix your car forums, and build a boat forums, and whatever kind of thing that you could possibly imagine doing, and political ones, and language studies, and all kinds of things. And you would find people of like mind to communicate with. Well, this, that has evolved now into blogs, where you have like minds coming together. And then you have, Twitter is tough because you're just talking to your group and to the wide, whoever just stumbles upon what you're doing. There's no real way other than hashtags to really adequately find like minds and to find that forum feeling, that community feeling. But with things like BuddyPress on WordPress, that's starting to have the social layer on top of your own website and blogs. That's rebuilding that community on your own site. You have Facebook and other things where communities are now coming back together and creating little villages where they can communicate. And that all harkens back to those days where we knew we wanted to spend time with people who thought like us and we wanted to learn from. And that community sense, I love that is now broken barriers, because we have people from all over the world can connect with each other like they did on CompuServe. You just had to be in that network. But at the time, that was practically all there was till AOL showed up and such.
Right.
But, there's, I think it's really, really important that people find those connections, and any tool that you're using that helps you find those communities and interact with those groups. I love. I wish they were a little more open, but we're on that track.
Well, I remember being on the local radio station years ago talking about BBSs, right? And as you know, we know we were all. I mean, you talk about us all being early adopters now with our iPads and everything. Oh boy, if you were on a BBS or even CompuServe, you were really an early adopter. And certainly if you were at the University of Washington on the ARPANET. enough said, right? Explaining email to the rest of your family was like explaining, well, I'm not going to go there. Explaining cult-like organizations. I've joined CompuServe. What is that? Well,
yeah. You should have seen. We were on the Alaska Highway, and I think we were in Fort Nelson, and I had a deadline, and I had to get the photo. Well, we weren't doing photos. Photos still had to travel by mail, but the article could then go by email. And so we found the post office, we mailed off the photographs, and then we were trying to find some phone to borrow. And we wandered into a local office. I think it was real estate. I don't know what it was. I don't remember. And we said, could we borrow your phone? They said, well, sure. Is it going to be a long distance? I said, no, it's going to be a local phone call. And I had the phone number right there. And I said it, written down with CompuServe's local service. And I said, it's going to be a local phone call. And they said, sure. And I reached over and I unplugged their phone from the wall to plug in my laptop. And these people completely freaked out, looked at us like they were waiting for little antennas to come out of the back of our head, and swore that we'd just broken their phone.
E.T. phone home.
Seriously, they had the idea of unplugging their phone from the little quick jack thing.
Oh yeah,
the little RJ jack. Was alien to them, and they were so upset, and they were so upset that we would do that in the process of borrowing that we tried to explain what was going on, and it was so uncomfortable for them because they were sure that we were breaking their telephone. We left, and we did find somebody who was more amenable to us pulling out the jack out of the wall and then plugging our laptop in. But it was amazing. Nowadays, people will think of you're weird if you want to, can I borrow a phone, and then you disconnect it. But what's weird is if you ask to borrow a phone and somebody hands you a telephone that's hooked to the wall and has a dial on it instead of buttons, you're weirded out. So that's how far we've come.
That since we're going back in memory lane here tonight, I feel like we should play some 50s music, Wolfman Jack, back in memory lane, do some doo-wop right in the background.
Some doo-wop, yeah.
Since we're going back in memory lane, you talking about traveling and going and, pulling the RJ45 or RJ11 jack out of the wall. I remember the first time I went to Europe on business in the mid to late 90s and wanted to do my personal email through, I can't remember what service I was using. This wasn't corporate. This was like, it wasn't copy. I don't know. Frankly, I can't remember. It was some personal email, internet, something like that. It was internet email by then. And I had okay, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
A Palm Pilot. Palm Pilot with a modem attachment to it that then had an RJ11, and I would plug in the modem in Copenhagen into this thing, do this long string of dial, this long international thing, and sync my Palm Pilot from Copenhagen to whatever the server was in the US and get my email and all that, and I could actually read my message boards and my email on this little black and white Palm Pilot with a modem attachment on it. I think it was 2400 baud modem, but it was text, so you weren't downloading a lot. And I think the Palm Pilot had 500K of RAM or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, if that, yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, that's insane. I was always the guy who was looking for the hack, right?
Me too.
I had a wireless Palm Pilot in the late 90s. I had a Palm 5 with a wireless sled.
Yep.
Which is why I always tell people, they're like, you canceled your newspaper in the late 90s, right? Because everyone's canceling their newspaper now, right? It's like, oh, I get it online. Why do I need this paper? And I'm like, yeah, and the piece that I never explain is I had a Palm Pilot with a sled, and I would be reading the New York Times and everything in black and white. There weren't any pretty pictures, but you could get all the news you needed. You could get AP, you could get anything you needed.
That's right.
In the late 90s on this wireless sled, It
was brilliant.
Yeah, and now people are doing this on their iPhone and their iPad. So, so
it's the same thing, but one of the points that I want to make is we're talking about, we're going back into time. And again, everything old is new again.
This is a surprise. We actually didn't put this on the list of going back in time.
No,
but that's okay.
But,
I like going back in time. I like
but
history.
I think that it's a really important point to understand. While we were started out talking about the innovation from Webvision and things like that, that again, that discovery that why don't we just use IRC for our business,
Exactly.
so that we can all talk to each other. Again, it's understand that everything old is new again. So let's really make this modern. I am so incredibly frustrated with people who contact me on Facebook, Twitter, I don't even know all the different, LinkedIn and all these different things that I am on and every place, and I have them all set up to come into my, email, but then I have to click 5 things to then sign into LinkedIn and find out what the hell did this person even ask me. And it was like a 4-word question. All they had to do was just email me. But no, they had to go through Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. That was convenient to them at the moment, but is inconvenient for the users. So this process of trying to keep track of all these communications, the blog comments, the Twitter thing, the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the, plink, plonk, ploop, plop, perp, whatever name that they're coming up with lately. And keeping track of all these communications is a lot of hard work. I'd love to have a one-stop shop, which seems to be my email inbox.
This is a great point.
Where they send through.
Yeah.
But we need to have a one-stop shop that gathers through all of these, like it's a reverse ping FM.
You want CompuServe again, where you can...
I want CompuServe, one place.
That was one place you went to get your personal email and your forums and everything else, and your news. They had news up there, and
I had my own little kind of dashboard all in one place that helped me keep track of all these
and
things.
People did that with AOL later. I mean, people who were on AOL did the same thing.
Now we're just spread across the planet. And the one tool that people seem to have the hardest time using, and yet it's still pervasive, and that's the damn phone. Just pick up the bloody phone and call. How hard is that? That is a technology that has not changed through all of this, and yet it's faster to text. Excuse me. Well, it is?
Yeah, no.
It's faster to tweet? It is? I don't think so. So again, everything old is new again, but let's remember that there's still value in these things, and don't make our lives complicated with this stuff.
So we're talking about what we're talking about here is walled gardens. So that is exactly what Facebook wants to be. That is what LinkedIn wants to be as a business. They want us to go there as our principal destination. Facebook wants to you log in and then you're there and you're sending messages, you're sending personal messages, you're interacting with everyone. Twitter as well, right? Twitter as well would be
absolutely.
I don't know if that's what their personal, if that's the true model that they have or not, but just like CompuServe was truly, it was the only thing in its class at the time, but it was still a walled garden. The problem is if you go out and you talk to, everyone else in the world, they talk about this problem. They say what do we need? Like, you need tools, things like OAuth and things underneath where you can move your contacts back and forth. Now, I don't know if that solves every problem, but you bring up a good point. I'll give you an example. Our intern, Cody, who worked on Webvisions, he's young, and where does he spend most of his time? Facebook. Not so much on Twitter. He's got a Twitter account, but he doesn't tweet a whole lot. I tweet a lot. Twitter is my social network of choice because it's 140 characters. It's fast. If you're busy, Twitter works for you really well if you get the right tools in place. Twitter seems to skew older. I mean, not, maybe late 20s, early 30s or something. Facebook skews younger, generally, until your mom gets on Facebook to find out what it's all. Until recently. So you have these generational, cultural kind of, Facebook is for younger folks, Twitter's a little bit more the older working folks or whatever, but they don't they don't interface well. I guess you could link your Twitter and Facebook. But you bring up this good point that, at the end of the day, the web and the net is an open platform and an open system, yet we are going to walled gardens to actually interact. So where do you see the solution? So Lorelle now dreams up, goes to bed, dreams up the solution to this problem that you just posed. Where do you see the solution in this? Tell me tomorrow when you wake up and you've solved the problem, what does it look like tomorrow? How do you
can promise me a little bit of sleep tonight? I have to sleep, remember?
Well, exactly.
We both have been burning the candle at too many ends right
exactly.
now this week.
But how do you? What do you see the solution? How do I, coming from Facebook, talk to you in Gmail or Twitter, and you don't use a lot of? I don't use a lot of Facebook, so if people message me in Facebook, I'm not going to see it, right? But if you DM me in Twitter, I'll probably see it right away. So how does peanut butter and chocolate live together on the web?
Now you've made me hungry and on top of sleeping. Okay, in a perfect Lorelle world where she wakes up tomorrow morning, there will be someone who will work with a two-tiered system. First of all, I don't want to put my content on sites that I cannot control. So for me, my business card on the web, my resume on the web, my life on the web is my blog. And so I want to have communications from all these other sites. I want to lead them back to my home office, so to speak, on the web, which is my blog. And so having that pulled in through APIs and whatnot is fabulous. And then I want to have communication through my blog, through all these different services. I want to have an email client that is also a social media manager. Now, there's no reason, since Google is intent on controlling the world. We used to think it was Matt Mullenweg. Now we know it's Google. Though Matt's doing a good job with WordPress.
Yeah, don't forget Facebook.
That's true. I know. Well, it's a little shaky ground there. But I really want to have, I love Gmail. So Gmail is fabulous. There's some really good things there. There's no reason why all the APIs from all these different things can't be little gadgets that fit into our Gmail that bring it all to one place. And honestly, if we can't easily get it in one place, it's going, things are going to shrivel up and die because it's just the process, or it's going to continue to be gateway, little gated communities, and then you just have to thrive in your community. We have to break that barrier, to get those. So I also believe what is also coming that is another barrier that has to be broken on the same subject is we have to break the language barrier. Now, it's starting to happen. I pushed for 2 years. It was my, every year I take on a platform. I stand on my soapbox and I do my ranting and raving. And a couple years ago, I actually spent 2 years ranting on we have to break the language barrier because I want to know what Boris in St. Petersburg is thinking and blogging, and I really want to know what's going on in South America. I want to know what's going on in Japan and China. I want to read those things. I want to see what their lives are like, and the language is a barrier to me. So they're living in their own language-gated community. So we have to break that. Now with things like Google Translate and things, those are now starting to go into the toolbar of the browsers and stuff, that we're getting faster translation. But their stuff isn't showing up in my searches. So if I happen to land on those international things, like TweetDeck has translation built into TweetDeck now, so you can instantly translate any tweet. But the tweet doesn't show up in your searches unless there is a word in English that gives it a reason to show up. So I have Woopra and I monitor discussions on Woopra, and when Woopra shows up, it's written in English. So I find all the Japanese, Chinese, Hindu, and everything else, Hindi, are all, come in to my search. And then I can translate them and make some kind of sense out of what they say. But we need to have that language barrier broken because we need to expand the communication and the interaction both ways and always, so that it's not a choice. I can see anything I want in any language. That's part of that. So in a perfect world, we will have broken the language. We'll have one-stop shop for all of our communications and not have to work so hard for sending and receiving, not one way. And our blogs will be our namespace. They will be our lives on the world from which everything else revolves around, as accessories, not replacements. Don't forget, for all of those people that are putting their whole life into Facebook, if Facebook goes tits up tomorrow, you lose everything you've done there.
And there's so many examples of that have come before on the web. I mean, I remember.
Absolutely.
I know we've interviewed people and they're like, oh, remember AOL this, or this Yahoo grew, or, you know, GeoCities that, or whatever, you know, just there's always been these things where people have just put everything on the web, but that's a risk with the cloud overall. I want to step back. So really your solution is kind of the universal inbox, this kind of inbox where this is where the information comes to you. And then you mentioned TweetDeck. I won't bring up the translation quite yet, but part of the problem with the universal inbox and the inbox in general is my inbox is full. And, you know, if you talk, I'm sure yours is. Now, you mentioned Gmail. I love Gmail because of some of the searching and things that you can do with Gmail that I wish I could do in a corporate environment using corporate tools by like companies that make corporate tools. If you know what company I'm talking about, that has 90% of the inbox market in corporations. Just a tip: it runs on Windows. But I use TweetDeck all the time, and that seems to me, because it's a dashboard ultimately, and it's that dashboard that I want as my inbox. I want a dashboard inbox so I can see the things coming in and be able to react to those things that are important. For example, in TweetDeck, the model is the most important thing that comes into TweetDeck for me is the DM, right? Because it's a private message. Oh, someone's DMing me. This is important. This is only for me. It's a personal message to me, which means I need to address this. Then there's the mentions, people who talk about me, right, on Twitter. And so that's important too, right? People are talking about me.
Absolutely.
Or they're including me in a conversation, so that's something that I should look at and decide to address or not. DM is almost like I need to address this, I need to respond. A mention may or may not warrant a response, right? And then there's all my other important searches, whether it's my business search or something I'm doing that I want to search on and respond to, or something that I'm interested in respond to. And then there's the last piece, which is just things I'm searching on that I'm just kind of monitoring. I'm not going to respond. It's just I'm lurking, right? It's you in the forum lurking, so to speak. And I remember talking to a local entrepreneur and saying, that's how my inbox should function. Exactly that way. Because today, everything that comes in my inbox is addressed to me. I don't know if it's a, hey, just want you to let you know and you're on this email string, or no, this is a message I need you to respond to personally between you and me. I don't, it's just this hodgepodge of crap that I get, or the people notifying me, the company email list, the stuff that I want to look at that I'm interested in. It's just a hodgepodge. To me, it's the dashboard. To me, it's the levels, the hierarchical levels of where my attention needs to focus. 1, 2, 3. And that's kind of how I envision my inbox. That's how I envision the future of information coming to me is this type of dashboard type model. Now, that
I agree
said,
with that.
It's all going to come in from, like you said, it's got to come in from Facebook. It's got to come in from Twitter. It's got to come in from your Gmail. It's got to come in from your MySpace, your IRC, you know, from all over the web, from your blog comments, and then people can take that action. You also mentioned that your blog is your destination. Ultimately, that's your namespace on the web, as opposed to your LinkedIn and your Facebook is not, correct?
Right.
Now,
because you don't control those.
And you do control your WordPress blog.
Yes, or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, I mean, if you host it, you own it.
Right.
And it ain't going anywhere as long as you're paying that hosting fee. And you know, it'd be smart not to go with Web Host R Us.
Right.
Go with a web hosting company that has a little bit of history and, you know, maybe sticking around for a while. But it's really important that you own your namespace and you own that site space.
But average guy doesn't want to go in and start his own blog, learn about the plugins, figure this all out.
Why do they have to?
Average guy just wants to log into Facebook and go, oh, here, it's all here. Oh, I can post photos. I can do that. I mean, that's the attraction to these walled gardens, to Facebook, to MySpace, these places, because it makes it attractive. It's an attractive way to post your content, right?
Right. And the thing that is exciting about what's going on with WordPress as well as other platforms is that it's getting easier and easier to make it a one-click process. So many web hosts have a one-click and you have it. There are themes that are just one-click. There's plugins that are one-click. You don't have to learn any code. You don't have to mess around. But you can control it. It doesn't mean you have to update it daily.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you need to have something that's there. And then if you want to control that conversation, you want to, you know, let people know what's going on or whatever, it's there. But you're leading people back to your home base. I think is really important. There's a part to this that there are a lot of tools that are out there in that will help with things like Gmail, like Cipher, I think it's pronounced, which has all kinds of tools that they're like rules that you can add to Gmail that will help filter out your email. And there's some wonderful ones in there that will actually use some algorithms that will sense, you know, it'll kind of digest the email and then filter it out and make some decisions on prioritizing them and things like that. You know, if you get an email that has, you know, 14 different emails that are, you know, addresses that are in the two line, well, that's you know, and a couple forwards, odds are that's probably a joke and not high on your priority list as compared to one that is just addressed to you specifically. So it mixes and matches some of those. So SYPHIR is just one of tools, and there's some growing tools out there that are helping, you know, and Merlin Mann is a part of the driving force with Zero Inbox and Tim Ferriss doing the 4-hour work week and things like that. The people are starting to come up with tools that are shrinking things down. But there's a part of this mix that is even more fascinating to me besides just tracking our communication, and that's the concept and the need of real time. I thought when Read Write Web had the very first real-time conference, of which our CEO, John Pozadis from Woopra, he was one of the speakers there. They had a little unconference thing in San Francisco trying to look at this, you know, issue of real time. Real time has become more and more important. Just like ICANN Cheeseburger Network is trying to, you know, jam out sites in 3 weeks and you know, and startups, this need to respond in real time is really important. It's why, you know, Woopra was one of the first on the web to introduce real-time web analytics, where you don't have to wait 12 to 24 hours. You see right now what's going on. You can respond right now. When you add that layer of real time to email and that prioritizing that's going on, who decides what's most important that needs your attention? Is it you? Or is it the person who's sending?
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating. What am I going to, you know, what? And
it's the machine.
When I talk, it's the machine. Yeah.
No,
when I talk about
that's the problem I have with it.
True.
That's the problem I have with real time. Well, every time real time comes up in real time web, you know, every time real time comes up, it's like it's unnatural. It's machine real time. It's not human real time. You know, and I understand.
Except that you and I are talking right now, and that's as real time as it gets. So communication can be real time.
But not.
But prioritizing that.
Exactly, but not. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a real time. So there's a real time aspect to the human condition, and there's we can get
Delegated
into
time.
we can get into metaphysics and the fact that we're constant machines, but the fact that we by our nature we live in real time until we die. But outside of that, as far as the intellectual thought process, there are real-time moments in the human experience, and there are non-real-time moments. I mean, we all go to sleep. Well, some of us all go to sleep at some point, and dream, or whatever. Definitely, I would say non-real-time moment. There is the thought process, the planning process, the scheming process, the contemplating your navel process, which could arguably be a non-real-time process. The coming back to issues in your life, non-real-time. The problem I have with the real time and the whole cloud is this. It seems to me it's just kind of a metaphor for reaction time, and we see it in journalism right now, because we know that there is a real-time aspect to journalism, and this is the problem with traditional journalism. They're falling behind in real time, whereas people like the read write web in the tech community are so good at it, because they're able to catch stories and react to them and get that information out. But I think the problem is we become slaves to the machine, and not even slaves to the machine, more slaves to the cloud. I ultimately see a breaking point with real time. I see us breaking down under it, because I don't think it's sustainable. I mean, we already deal with real-time systems in our political and financial system today. We have seen, as I think even when I read Asimov when I was a kid, predicted, we see sudden changes in software that create conditions on Wall Street that then create conditions in our financial lives, right? Real-time trading. Right. Those are machines trading. Those are not people trading. Those are machines that react at split seconds, that are making decisions. There is more and more of that coming. So, I mean, to me, the real-time web, does it become this Asimov utopia where at some point the machines just take over and make life happen, and you human being go ahead and sit down on the couch and deal with your.
See, now you have
life.
To get the conversation back to Amber Case, because
I know you know what I'm talking about.
She's the
I know you've read
expert on
this.
that.
I know she.
I know it. Amber Case is the expert on that part. What I know is when I give my presentations on real-time analytics and analytics.
Lorelle? Don't you feel
I
overwhelmed?
do, and I feel complete. No, correction.
Okay.
I don't feel overwhelmed. I feel whelmed.
Okay.
Since whelm is not in the dictionary, I think it means bigger than over. Okay. So I'm totally whelmed. But it's when I talk about web analytics, I talk to people about distracting stats, and I think it's the same thing. For example, we tend to to pay attention to what browser people are using and things like that. Well, nobody gives a crap. Really, unless you're designing a site, you don't even need to be looking at the browser side, the screen resolution. We're distracted by those things. The same thing when we pay attention to the bounce rate. They only spend 3. What if in that 3 to 5, 10 seconds they found the answer that they had been looking for hours and hours and hours, and you just saved their life? And they're going to go off and brag about you, but they're going, no, we have to get sticky. We have to get people staying on the site because they're bouncing off too fast. So it depends on your perception. And that's part of the problem with all of this information is you have to, like as Hank Wozniak says, you have to do asset building thinking. You have to change that thought, that perception of what it is that is most important. Now, if I get an email from my mother, that rides up, or my husband, that rides up in my priority scale, because I need to respond to those, especially to my husband. There's like this obligation. We're married, therefore I should be paying attention to him, right? So I can understand that makes sense. I can set up certain kinds of filters or Google alerts or things that are really prior to me in the moment. And then somehow set those up so that they sift to the top. So there's some things that are really easy to go, this is a priority and this is not a priority. It's the little subtle things that are harder to go, where I sit there. As a friend of mine said at Webvisions, I just have an absolute paralysis. He was talking about trying to decide whether or not, what he was going to put his energy into next. And what it all boiled down with is he couldn't think of a domain name. And it's like, you are paralyzed because you can't choose a domain name. He says, I don't know if I should be .com, .net, .com was taken, so I don't know if I should be .net, .org, info, .name, and I can't go any further. I said, how long have you been sitting on this? Mm-hmm. He said, well, about 3 months. I said, you can't move forward with this brilliant idea because you can't decide if you're a .net or a .info or a .org? I said, there's something deeper wrong with the problem if that's what's paralyzing you. And we get caught up in these things of we have to pay attention to stuff that isn't important. And so I don't know how to filter that. I don't know how to really do that. But something that Shashi Belamkonda, my really, really good friend from Network Solutions, that I spent time with this week with Web Solutions, and I see him at conferences and stuff all the time. I just adore him.
He gave a talk as well, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Yep. But he said to me, I have decided to make an appointment with myself for a change. Mm-hmm. I said, wait a minute, Shashi, you're one of the busiest people I know in the world. What does that mean you're going to make an appointment with yourself? He says, I need some me time, and I need some brain time for me. I need to just sit and contemplate. I need some navel gazing.
Right.
I need, because he's come to that point where he realizes that he is being paralyzed by all this indecision because he hasn't stepped away from it and allowed his brain to just go quiet, mm-hmm. and to just allow all of the input to go into the pot and start boiling. And then, the aromatherapy of whatever analogy you can use is so silly. But anyway, Dave Moyer is the king of metaphors and I suck at it. So anyway, forgive me, Dave, for that one. But it's, unless you set aside time. Actually, Cheryl Richardson, who wrote the brilliant Life Makeover series books, she said it best. When you're on the airplane, what is the instruction that we always ignore when it comes to the oxygen mask dropping down from the ceiling? What do the flight attendants tell us?
You put it on your kid before you put it on you. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, but that's not what it is.
Sorry,
said.
I always listen to that one. I'm always like, I was an Eagle Scout, so I'm always like the one who's like, okay, I got to remember to put all these oxygen masks on all the kids before I put it on myself. It's kind of ingrained.
Except that's not what's said. That's not what's said.
Oh, no, it's put it on yourself first and then put it on.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, I got it wrong.
Put it on
totally
yourself
got it wrong.
First. You got it wrong, but that's what we interpret.
Yeah.
Save the children first.
Exactly.
The truth of it is, she says, it's just like that. You have to put it on yourself.
You did the perfect example because I totally got it opposite. Totally got it wrong.
Yeah. You put it on yourself first before you help others.
Right.
Now, why?
Right.
Why? Why do you do that?
Well, you need to be you need to have oxygen. You need to be able to be breathing to save others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if you are taking care of so worst case scenario, you're taking care of a family member or a friend or somebody who's dying or very, very sick, and you're just busting ass, you're not sleeping, mm-hmm. you're just taking mm-hmm. care of them to help them heal.
Absolutely.
The more burnt out you become, the less you are able to help them. The same thing when you're trying to support all this social media and all these different things. If you're not stopping to take care of yourself, whatever that looks like, if it means using the tools that minimize this, of going with the inbox zero methodology, Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week, whatever mm-hmm. those techniques are that help you to make this process easier, to give you some real life time so you can navel gaze and allow yourself, take care of yourself so you can allow that creative energy to come up. You can allow yourself to explore the brilliance that's in your mind instead of just feeling like you're assaulted. I think the world would be a hell of a lot better place, don't you?
I think that's fantastic advice, Lorelle. I really do. And I think that that's something that I think what you've pointed out is that the real time is going to happen no matter what, but how we deal with it and how we prioritize it and how we breathe and take that time is the most important thing. And I think we've all, I'm sure you speak from experience when you say that, I think we've all hit the wall from time to time on that. And it's fantastic advice. It really is.
Thank you. But I think it's really important that we not get hysterical about any of these things, and we really do. And I'm one of those people, people say, well, you're always the first out with the news. And I love that people think that. But the reality is I don't blog about things until they've been out there, sometimes for a week, sometimes 3 or 4 or a month. Because I sit back and I look at what's being said and I find that missing piece. And I say, okay, they're talking about this, and this is their agenda, but this is the most important part here, and nobody's talking about it. I think this is what needs to be talked about. And that is, again, going back to what we first started talking about, that's what makes people the thought leaders, is when they are the people that bring the new perspective and the new idea. One of the things that we talk about when we're teaching photography classes and writing classes and workshops and training programs, and I tell this at all, for all of the training programs and things I do with businesses all over the world, when we talk about sharing your content, it's not publishing, it's not writing, it's sharing. When it comes to the web, this is the difference between the web and the rest of the stuff. It's about sharing your content. And it boils down to this. If you want to get... Are you chewing ice? All right. Yes, of course I heard it.
You heard it on Skype, but the folks at home did not hear it.
Oh, all right. I heard it on Skype. Okay.
Yeah, you heard it. You heard it on your end, but they didn't hear it.
All right, so I'm going to get back to my profound statement that I have to listen to your body noises and they don't have to. Okay, so my profound message that comes out of this is that if you want to get someone's attention, you either have to show them something they've never seen before, or you have to show them something in a way they've never seen it before. So if you have the only good in focus, and now with all of these people with cell phones, with cameras on their phones, our iPhones and stuff like that, I'm waiting. The Sasquatch, Bigfoot, his time is really, really short. He's going to be caught by somebody with a good, clear picture. If you have that alien that's nice, provable picture, that's something that nobody has seen before. You got it. You are totally. But since we live in a world where we don't have those things, the only choice is to show, because everything old is new again, is to show them something in a way they've never seen it before. Mm-hmm. That's the magic. And so whatever it is that you're doing, if you're producing a product, if you have a blog story you want to tell, whatever it is, come at it from your original perspective and show it to us in a way we've never seen it before. And that is what makes a difference. Now, I want to tell you about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Are you ready for a little really, really going back in history stuff? Dr. Normal, are you really ready for history?
Oh, yeah. I went to
Okay. Yeah?
I went to a parochial high school, so.
You understand? When the Dead Sea Scrolls came out, they were tremendously revolutionary in many, many ways. And one of the things that was the most exciting for me when I went to go see them in Israel before they went on tour around the world was not the fact that somebody was able to copy Isaiah and whatnot, exactly as what we have today. It's like, oh, yay, copyright infringement back then. It was the blog echo. Even back then, they were just copy. Now, that's how they shared. They kept the things alive with copying, but I was not impressed by that. What I was impressed with in the Dead Sea Scrolls were the fragments that were pulled together to create the journal. All these journals of their day-to-day minutia. The littlest, boringest, how they ate, when they prayed.
They were the original bloggers.
They were the original bloggers. And they preserved this. But what was more important was that historians and anthropologists and archaeologists had no information and really no awareness that there was communities in these areas of Israel, near Quorum and stuff. They didn't have, in Jericho, they thought everybody was in Jericho. They just, because when you look at it now, it's barely survival. You got En-Gedi and you got Jericho. There's like nothing there. It's dried up yuck. Well, that doesn't represent what it looked like 5,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago or whenever it was. And so they didn't understand that there were communities living there, so there was no awareness of, oh, we need to look here. There's something interesting going on. They didn't know until these were found. And instead of finding literally chips of pottery and clay and a little bit of iron here or something, or copper from the mines nearby, and then trying to assume, let's assume, the great, what is it with Johnny Carson had the great Swami dude?
The great
Karnak.
Mm-hmm.
Karnak. So literally, this is how I envision much of the archaeology and anthropology was holding up these little fragments to their heads and going, I see that they ate many grains, no corn. I don't know. They had to make a lot of this shit up because they really didn't know, and they made a lot of assumptions based on what other people were doing. When the Dead Sea Scrolls came up, and these words that filled in these blanks that they had no idea existed, and now there's archaeology digging and things that are going down there, uncovering just tremendous information from this area that they thought was a nothing. And understand that people live their lives from day to day. They made decisions. They were married. They had fights. They had deaths. They had court systems. It's fascinating to learn about these people. And the blogs of today, I don't think the Facebooks of today, or a little bit of the tweets of today, but I really believe that the blogs of today are today's Dead Sea Scrolls. And when 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years from now, they're sifting through the little fragments of, cloud chips, the little data chips that are left, they're going to be putting together our day-to-day lives in a very unique way, because there's going to be billions and billions and billions of bits of information instead of a few hundred or maybe a few thousand that will help to preserve our history. I do a lot of genealogy research with my family, and I'm just thrilled when I find something other than a date and a location, when I find some little testimony of a person's life of how they lived and what was their story. More than just a date. I don't want a date. I want to know how they lived. Who were their friends? Were they good people, bad people? What were their day-to-day lives like? Our blogs and what is happening with today's publishing platform is today's Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'm really, really proud to be a part of helping people understand that and realizing how important it is that everybody have a chance to have their say.
Do you think more and better information will be preserved from the cloud from our time on Earth than it was back in the days of the Dead Sea Scrolls, or do you think we're in the future it'll all be lost, just like most of antiquity? The majority of antiquity is lost, and the daily lives of the people are lost. In archaeology.
I think that they will be preserved because we are reaching a technological point in our lives where we are taking archiving and backwards compatibility more seriously. So says she who is looking at a 3.5 floppy disk drive piece that's sitting on her desk like a paperweight. So that doesn't work. But we are getting better about in the big picture of things, about archiving and saving things like to the web and to servers and different things. So I think that yes, and then I think no. There's a better chance now because there's so much diversification in the information, where things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, only little bits, there just wasn't a way to mass produce things. So I think there's a greater chance of it. But the bigger question is, the bigger thing that I think is going to happen is that history has been written, as we all know, by who? Whom? The winners.
Right.
History has been told by the textbooks, the winners, the propaganda, and it's not necessarily the truth. And until that brilliant machine, so beautifully described by Orson Scott Card in the book he did on the Past Watch, Christopher Columbus Past Watch book, which started out as a series. And Orson, get busy. We need more in that series. Got it? Anyway, but the Past Watch book, this is probably among the top 10 of the most life-changing books that I've ever read. It's just brilliant. They come up with this ability to be able to view the past, like through a video thing, so they can find out all the truths. They can look actually into the past and see Jesus or whoever was represented it. They get to see, Moses. They get to see all the different things. So there's no more mysteries because we now know the truth. So the stories don't matter. So until that machine is created, what is different now that wasn't available even 100 years ago is that the stories are now told first person and preserved first person, instead of third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh generation, or through the winners, or those who could afford to publish the media. And when you have stories that are first person, experiential, it's harder, no matter how much they try to control it, it's much harder for governments and other controlling agencies to wipe that out. I don't call it truth, but I call it the stories. I think that more of the reality is going to be preserved instead of, the hidden things. I mean, presidents been having affairs for as long as there's been presidents and kings and royalty and rulers. They've all been, humping each other and doing evil things and having a whip in the back closet. They've all been doing evil things, but now everybody talks about it and it's all known instead of, well, yes, but nobody talked about it back then. And so I think that's going to change the future of it. So, boy, have we gone totally around circles.
Yes, I think it's it's time. Oh, I'm not Cammy Chaos. I think it's time to wrap up. But I think it's an interesting point that at least we, with blogs and with what's going on today, we do have the first person. I think, I always do the little buzzkill moment when someone makes a point like that. I think the problem will be who can manipulate that data in the future to their own their own desires, and hopefully there are mechanisms in place, ways in which we can look at the data and ensure that it's genuine and ensure that that's what that blogger or that person experienced and that their words were not changed and edited and essentially revised.
That's right, but that's why I think that while I hate the echo chamber, there's something to be said about the viral nature of the information. The more places it is, the harder it is to, it's like having ants in your house. The more that swarm in, the harder it is to stop them from coming in and destroy them, because there's just, there's the odds of too many. And so I'm definitely with EFF and a lot of the electronic, their names just went right out of my head. Mm-hmm. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I do a lot of work with copyright protection and the rights of content for free and open source distribution, as well as for protected distribution, with Jonathan Bailey of Plagiarism Today and a lot of other people and a lot of companies that I work with along that line. And I really believe in the openness of content and the sharing of content, not the ripping off and using for financial means. That's a different issue. But the freedom to have your voice heard. And that's why I'm so proud to be associated with WordPress and with other associations that work so hard to help people have their say for free or next to nothing. And I will fight to the death to give everybody a chance to have that say, because I do want to know what Boris is thinking in St. Petersburg and Wing is thinking in Japan. And I want to hear what they have to say and share that information, because it's going to be harder to control, harder to stamp out if we get to have that dialogue going and it is spread out. So I'm not going to let you buzzkill it. There is hope. There is hope.
Well, we definitely do live in a hopeful time, and we definitely do have those voices. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of wrap it up here as we bring in the music. Hopefully, there it is. As we roll out here, should we mention the book, the blogging tips book from 2007? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's still current. Blogging tips, what bloggers won't tell you about blogging.
Okay,
and
put it on there. Blogging tips.
All right, and then you can find me all over the place, including I'm on Lorelle on WordPress at lorelle.wordpress.com. I'm on Bitwire. I have one of the partners in Bitwire Media, and we produce a variety of shows, including the Wordcast Network, which is covering WordPress and blogging and social media industry. We have a new site I'm really excited about coming up called makingmylife.com. It's going to be launching in June, which is self-improvement and motivation and inspiration and all things about making your life, whatever it is that you want to be. Lots of possibilities. And we also do production and a lot of training, workshops and things for that, and also Woopra, which is the real-time web analytics program at woopra.com. I'm all over the place.
Go check her out, Lorelle VanFossen. Thank you very much for joining us for another Crazy Talk. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. It was wonderful. We got to do it again.
Well, we can. I think we just scraped the surface. There's a lot more to talk about. So for Lorelle and myself, I want to thank you for joining us. We'll have this posted, and look out for some of the Webvisions content. You'll see it soon. I'm Doc Normal. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us on Crazy Talk.